Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you. We are continuing to work our way through Shyla Catherine's book, Beyond Distraction, and it's drawing from a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Middle Length Discourses, Majjhima Nikaya 20, removal of distracting thoughts. And we've talked about the first three strategies, and we talked last week about the fourth strategy, and I'll continue talking about the fourth strategy. But I wanted to start tonight with a story that I heard regarding which distracting thoughts are we doing this with? And learning that really is as much an art as it is a science, and it's individual for each of us. But the story goes like this. A person is meditating in a cabin, and that cabin can kind of represent your mind and your meditation. And people could be walking by the cabin, and people could be talking, and cars could be going by, but they're all outside the cabin, and those are distractions. You just stay with your meditation object. They can be there, the sounds can be there, like hints of thoughts can be there, no problem. And then maybe somebody comes up to the cabin and knocks on the door. Still, first time that they knock, you just still stay with your meditation, stay with your meditation object. But then maybe they knock again. So actually maybe it's, an emergency, or maybe there's something important. This is, so if this distracting thought is knocked once, you try and just stay with your meditation object. They're knocking again. You need to go and answer the door, and you want to answer the door with the most huge smile and welcome. Welcome whatever it is, and then start to learn about it and work with it. And that's really strategy 4. And I'll say one more thing about when to be using strategy 4, which is where you're really looking straight at this distraction and you're trying to unpack it. You're trying to understand it. For myself, the time that I would use this, I spoke last week about things that are pretty, some toxic, really unhealthy mental patterns that we could have, or even habits. For myself, I know that something needs my attention, investigation. It's a lot of it's my body tells me. So in meditation, when there's quite a bit of we had a retreat this past weekend, and someone had a question about their mind looping. If your mind is looping, if there's a lot of memory and rehearsing and regurgitating, this is a time to stop and use strategy 4. And in daily life, for me, where I realize, there's something inside of myself I need to look at. My body tells me. I'm usually, there's quite a strong physical reaction to something that's disproportionate to what is happening. Like maybe someone makes a comment, and then there's this, wave of something inside, or my head gets light, or another cue for me is when I start when I'm aware that I've gone to a very young part of myself, a very young place, like and we're all different, the kinds of habits we have, but I've had a lot in my life of um, sort of victim, feel sorry for myself, poor me, no one understands, um, feel overburdened, these kinds of things. And it'll be different for other people. Other people might go to a place where they're feeling uh, very defensive or very put upon. So when you're having reactions that have a physical component and they're quite strong, this is where it's something that you want to do strategy for and start to investigate the causes and unravel the root. What And sometimes you have to go back to your family of origin. You have to go back to uh, identifications that you have, strong identifications, ideas about yourself that need examining. So a really good acronym for this is RAIN. R for recognize what's happening. I'm feeling defensive. I'm feeling angry. I'm overreacting. I'm afraid. I'm anxious. Recognize. R for recognize. And then A for accept. So important that we just accept this is what's happening for me right now. This is what's going on. There's blame and shame are showstoppers. They're just things that are in our culture, things that are maybe been in our family that they're immature, they're unhelpful, they're positioned. And the anecdote is to really be honest and accepting of what's happening. And then I is for investigation, RAI. And investigation is where you want to be asking yourself questions such as, what's fueling these thoughts, and what feelings accompanying these thoughts, and just what's going on here. Investigation. And then N for non-identification, not taking it personally. And I would like to talk quite a bit this evening about the N. It's something that's so unique to the Buddha's teachings. This understanding of this mind body, each mind body is just it's not what we think that it is. There's not a little driver inside, it's not like that. It's a process. It's a verb, not a noun, and it's not this separate, independent thing that exists. It exists within a context. It's completely dependent on the environment, and it's just made up of 4 elements. It's not what we think it is. And so non-identification with what's happening just allows the whole process to flow. It allows us to go deeper in our meditation. It allows us to be completely honest about what is actually happening, and to be, truly curious and truly interested. I heard Bhikkhu Thanissaro. I went to a workshop many, many years, dozen years ago, And in the workshop, he said that somewhere the Buddha says that there's two things that a person needs to make progress on the path and to have success in their spiritual life. And I've not yet been able to find the reference for this, but he said, the Buddha said, two things necessary: that a person's honest and a person has powers of observation. And that's really a lot of what's necessary with this recognize, accept, investigate, don't take it personally, non-identification, is that we're really honest and that we're really observing what's actually happening in our own experience and in our own reactions. And with the so that's recognizing, what's happening now, being really honest and being willing to truly observe. And then acceptance, just a few more words about that, is it's so important and actually can be so difficult for us to fully accept ourselves, fully accept the experience that we're having, and then fully accept other people, the way they are and what's happening for them. And it's such a powerful, it's a game changer when we really start to fully accept how we are. The Buddha analogy that he gave that gets quoted often is this analogy of the two darts. The one dart is this experience that I'm having. I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling afraid, or something. I've got the flu and I feel sick. These darts, that first dart, it's just life. It's just having a body, being born on the earth is the first dart. And then what we can do with our practice is lessen the impact of the second dart. And sometimes we do second dart and third dart and fourth dart and fifth dart and sixth dart. And then we start throwing darts out at other people as well. And the Buddha says that's what we can make a difference with. And that second dart is if something's happening that's uncomfortable, that's difficult, that's not what I'm wanting. A lot of times my response to that is this second dart. I get upset, I blame. Those are all the second dart. And that's what we can begin to learn, how to not be, gouging ourselves over and over and over, beating ourselves up. That second dart. And that's why when that pattern, that habit knocks the second time, the third time on the cabin door of your meditation hut, you want to open it and welcome that. That's the accepting. Welcome it and be interested. What is it that that you're here to show me? What is it that I need to see? What is it that I need to learn? And lots of times that second dart is us, resisting our experience and not liking it. There's a great Sheryl Crow song, right? Like, it's not about having what you want. It's about wanting what you have, And when, lots of times when aversion is arising, this is a very important thing to know. There's such a tendency. This is why one of the reasons that meditation can be difficult, especially at the beginning, because our mind, our habit energy in our mind tends, it has a tendency and it often has a habit energy of responding to something um, very similarly to what it is. So often we respond to anger with anger. Often we respond to aversion with more aversion. We get discouraged that here it is again. And the 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 one way to really work effectively with our minds is this whole piece of acceptance. If you accept aversion, oh, I'm feeling resistant. Oh, I'm feeling discouraged. Oh, this, not this again. If you just accept it, that then you're you're on your way out of this aversion cul-de-sac, this aversion pool, because um, you've already changed the flavor of your experience, because you're not adding more aversion to your aversion, and then you judge yourself for all your aversion, and then you get discouraged, and then you go to sleep. I mean, like, just blah. We all have done that. And very interesting, our aversion, actually, there's a lot of times there's a purpose in our aversion. There's a protective function of aversion. A lot of times when aversion arises, you can get really curious. It's like and kind of like the oil light on your car. It's a warning. I'm feeling aversion. You can get very curious. Oh, I need to set a boundary in this relationship, or I need to start getting more sleep, or taking better care. There's often a message in it of a way that we've maybe betrayed ourselves in some way, or violated ourselves in some way, or allowed that to happen. Aversion can be a teacher, and you really want to be learning to accept aversion. It's a teacher, and then we need to accept it, to allow it to start to dissolve, and understand, if there's this annoying person or an annoying situation, aversion is it's not gonna fix it. The Buddha gives us an analogy. It's like picking up excrement, getting ready to throw it at the person or throw it at the situation. But the fact is, we've picked up excrement. So for investigation, and it's trying to really unravel the causes, trying to get to the causes, trying to understand the causes. Why is this difficult for me? Why is this happening? And I think until we start to investigate recognize our experience, accept our experience, and then investigate our experience, there's such a tendency for us to misunderstand causes. We tend to, I love the suttas very much, and so many of them end with someone's listened to the wisdom of the Buddha, and they say it's a formula. It's at the end of many suttas. Like, oh, you've turned upright what was upside down. And I think that's very significant. It's not like we just get things a little bit wrong. we get them dead wrong, like upside down wrong. And I think we do the same with causes. I think sometimes we think, you know, we take responsibility for things that actually aren't our responsibility. And then, but we don't take responsibility for the things that really are our responsibility. We do this a lot, you know, we think that, oh, someone's upset. Oh, I caused it. No, that the causes of the condition of my mind and my heart, they're arising right here inside of me. If you're upset, Sangamita, that's because of you, not because of me, you know. But we get this way off. And then when I'm upset, I want to blame someone else. And so this is where, you know, we honestly, we get it upside down. You know, I can't make anyone happy. A lot of times we know this, but, you know, I can't really make anyone miserable either. I mean, there are extremes, right? Where someone, I'm not saying, you know, if someone's in an abusive relationship, there are causes that are horrific, and that person needs to get out of that relationship. But I'm talking about people that are, you know, for the most part, living as moral, you know, pretty moral lives. These people that I live with, they do not cause my happiness or my unhappiness. That's here. That's a very important premise the Buddha is laying out for us, which is it makes you very responsible, but it's fantastic news because you can really change your level of peace. You can change your level of happiness because you can train your mind. Yeah. And non-identification. So investigate the causes, and that often as we're investigating the causes, we can be going from the gross experience to some of the subtler things that are there. So, for example, you might be feeling anger, and then if you really are with it and you're accepting it, and then you're starting to investigate, why is this here? Why is this arising? You might realize that underneath it's like some disappointment. You know, you're going to get to subtler and subtler. And then in the disappointment, you know, what's that? And then you might realize, oh, there's this lingering thing that I'm afraid that my needs won't get met. You know, you just can go down, 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 from gross to more and more subtle, and you will feel it in your body. Just like this is, you know, Jesus actually says, you know, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. There's really there's power in that, you know, just even though it could be really major, like, wow, I've got a lot of fear. But then there's this relief because it's true, that's real, that's actually what's going on. And that's the beginning of this freedom. And then you don't have this, you know, pushing away of what's really happening. You don't have this house of cards that you're trying to, you know, you're like, oh, yeah, bless my heart. You know, and you can then start to take care of those, maybe those stories or those old wounds or those beliefs, and you can start to examine them and start to get them more, you know, delete some files and update some files, update the software, you know, get with the program, you know, and have something that's more real and more current and working better in your life and in your relationships. And this is all really, really possible when we start to um, make non-identifying a priority and understand that and try and start to unhook from some of the identities that we build and actually start to track and watch some of the identities that we build. I mean, they're constant throughout, this was really so embarrassing, but like I went to Sati Serenia in near Ottawa in Perth, and that's where I became an anagarika, like Bethany, wearing white, and that's where you like, I really want to try, I want to try, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and it just I got bumped out of my life, like I had been a professional and I'd owned a condo and a car and had children and then boom, I'm like doing all this stuff that I'm terrible at. It was really difficult. And I can remember I had to do a bunch of gardening, and I had deliberately bought a condo in Vancouver that didn't have a balcony because it was so actually Sangamita had me replant a pot, a
You
plant.
offered.
I said, what do you want me to do? And then that's one of the first things I did here. And I practically destroyed this poor plant. She hasn't asked me to do anything like that. But anyway, doing all this gardening. Oh, it was just, anyway, remember I was digging this hole and someone else was digging a hole near me. And then, I mean, it was just so strong because I'd been stripped of all my identities. So, but super invested in this hole. And then I realized I was suffering so badly because my hole wasn't fast enough or big enough or deep enough and I just realized that's just a bizarre example from my own life, but you can watch it, you start to, we just identify with so many things. Like we identify with all of our stuff. We identify with all of our roles, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. And we can identify with images. We can identify with our nationality, like all of it. And the more we're identifying with things, the more we're suffering, period. Because then you're defending things, you're protecting things, you're trying to maintain things. So this non-identification, very, very important, very, very helpful. And to start to see that our suffering and our upsets, are often linked to our identification. And our identification, lots of times, is things that actually are limiting us and hindering us. Oh, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. Well, that's just the way I am. None of this is true. These are all just conditioned, fabricated things that we've picked up from our lives. And this is one aspect of meditation. We have the opportunity to get more raw, more close, more intimate with these things that are difficult inside of us, and then start to unpack them, understand them, care for them, and change them. And non-identifying is incredibly helpful. We've often picked up these ideas of responsibility that they're not our responsibility. And we can really be making things harder on ourselves than they need to be. Yeah. And for things that are really sticky, it can be extremely helpful to just remember that all things are changing all the time. Notice the impermanence. This is a big part of depression. You get to thinking that it will always be like this. No, it will change. Everything will change. And when things are tough, well, they're going to change too. And that can sometimes be very, very helpful. And the last thing I want to say tonight is just to be creative. Try different things. So we did a retreat this past weekend, and I was really impressed. People were trying different things and being creative. Um, y- y- just start to become your own best friend. Somebody was struggling with sleepiness, and then they did this thing where they were really with their breath for 10 breaths, like really, really with it. And then they stopped and wrote down something they were grateful for. And then they were with their breath, 10 more breaths. That's so creative, very, very skillful. So just feel a lot of permission. Try different things. You don't be limited to things you've heard in Dhamma talks. Try different things. And if the mind is becoming more wholesome, then oh, this is skillful. In this moment at this time, this is skillful. And then you might try it again and it doesn't work. And that's just things change. But be creative. Yeah. So I'll end there. And if anyone has any questions or any comments or wants to report from last week, posing a question to themselves about what's happening here, we can have some time for that.
I want to make a little comment about this. Just one second. Great. So I've been in a situation where I felt that I really needed to help someone else. Like I'm the savior. And I had a chat with and the cookie, she was saying, "Oh, no, Meryl, you're saying this," and so I'm hearing, I'm thinking, "Oh no, that's not what I'm saying." And then I changed the words around. I think, "Oh, I'll try what she's saying. I don't think she gets it." And it was like, okay, we need another 10 minutes because I had to straighten that out so she'd understand. But then when I walked out of the kuga, I shut the door and I'm going to the back door of the monastery. And it was like, okay, wait a minute. I need this. Wasn't so much I was going to save someone. I realized I needed what was happening. And then, of course, light goes on and all your light bulbs out in front of you. But it was really enlightening for me to realize that I was getting more probably than I thought I was giving. Just like I needed. So it was pretty profound to me to see that. And then, of course, all that stuff came about me needing stuff.
Very honest. So honest, Marilyn. It's so honest, Yeah. Talking about situations where, we're at times, it was easy for me to spot because I've done it so much in my life where I, out of my own need and my own insecurity, made myself indispensable and thinking I'm giving, and actually, I had a lot of identity, super people pleaser, like me, please, and yeah. Scott, yeah, please.
I have a question about non-identification, and it has to do with how, if we're practicing and we're trying not to identify with certain roles that our culture has put us into, how do you kind of compromise between what the culture wants you to do and your own non-identification so that you can fulfill those roles in a healthy way. You know, like I think everybody in this room has some kind of job or profession, or and we all have certain duties that we need to perform according to what those jobs and roles are. So it does put, you know, the onus is on us to do our jobs. And I use the word jobs loosely. It could be being a father, being a parent, being a husband, being, as well as being an engineer or a doctor or cooking, you know, whatever. So how do you non-identify when the culture is saying, no, you're in this role and you need to fulfill this role?
It's a good question. And other people can speak to it. Do you want to answer? Dr. Dumka.
Well, maybe I need an example from you. I mean, in my own life, I was just a very stubborn person, and I remember going against all kinds of norms, and, you know, nobody was going to tell me, you know, put me in a box. And so it was just, for myself, it was just, I guess, having an idea of what was right and true for me and just going for it, and to heck with what other people thought. But I don't know. I don't know.
So
I don't know.
you found it easy to non-identify when you were a practicing psychiatrist. Is that what you meant?
It was, I mean, it was difficult at times. I mean, I had a lot of prejudice.
Against you,
I had a lot of emotional abuse, I'll say, in my training. But I was just very determined.
So actually what I'm hearing her say, Scott, is that she didn't conform to the roles that her culture was trying to place on her, which is slightly different than non-identifying. So we'll continue to unpack it.
The thing that comes to my mind is that I notice the verb, and I notice when there's an I am an engineer, and how can I replace that verb? So I do engineering is different than I am. Similarly, a place that I've watched that come up a lot would I am depressed or I have depression. You know, and like how many different identities tend to be that I am, and is there a different verb that I can put in there that honors the fact that this is a part of something in my life that I'm fulfilling? This is part of my duties, this is part of my experience, but that shifts it away from being who and what I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a speech language pathologist before I became a nun, and I work with children with developmental differences. And it was a big deal. It was really important to speak of children that were on the autism spectrum, you know, not autistic kids, you know, but I think that the language is representative of something much deeper, which is, I mean, when we're strongly identified with, I'm a mom, you know, and these are my children, then it's just so easy to, for me, that's a very strong one, you know. Then when my children were not doing that well, there was this double whammy, like I'm concerned about that, and I'm feeling like a failure, and I'm feeling responsible. It was hugely strong for me, and really harmful for my kids. So yeah, it's this whole identity. This is my identity. If you can if you can just be feeling it, that's the start. Like, wow, this is heavy. This is complicated. When it's heavy, when it's complicated, when you're getting really reactive and really defensive, you know you're really identified. So you want to how do you undo that? First of all, like recognizing that that's what's going on, and then just understanding, like this, because as soon as we have our identity, then we have our worth all wrapped up with it, and it gets really performative. Yeah. Right.
It's almost sounding to me like identifying with a role and being attached to it. There's an attachment, and there's possibly a fear. If you, let's say, were no longer in the role, lost the role, gave up the role, then there's a loss of self, sense of self,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
then there's fear associated with those losses. And so if you have that attachment to that role, then you're identifying with it, and there's a risk in that. You feel like there's something to lose there. So I guess the idea is recognize the attachment and try to disassociate with it. You know, who are you if you're not the engineer? Are you an engineer, or do you do engineering? It sounds funny, but it saves you a bit of the risk of the loss of self. You know, I thought of myself that way. I made a point never to think of myself as a pilot. I always said I fly things, because if I was no longer a pilot, then I wouldn't want to have that identity crisis.
Please. Yeah. Kie.
Yeah, I find this discussion really interesting because right now I'm doing this Bow Valley intercultural facilitation training. And one of the exercises we were just asked to do was to write 10 I am statements. I did struggle with it a little bit because I think that some people in the room have alluded to this identification with a specific role could be quite harmful in some ways. And I know for myself, like I had a pretty serious rock climbing accident a couple of years ago. But I think even though I had been climbing for a number of years and like it is one of my passions, I never necessarily needed to identify as a climber. And I think that actually helped me a lot because in recovery, I was able to do other things. And I had a landlord at the same time who had a pretty serious knee injury, and she really lost her sense of self because she was like an ACMG hiking guide, and she had her own like outdoor adventure company. So yeah, she just really suffered a lot because she didn't know how to see herself without that. Maybe it's just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. Great. Silka, and then we're at time.
Actually, just functioning as a translator here.
Oh, great.
I have to understand first.
Yeah, great.
Whoops. Okay, so my sister Carmen was wondering that when we were born and then we're conditioned, so our DNA is being conditioned for so many years, and are we trying to rewrite our DNA now when we try to not identify, like I've identified myself for so long for la la la. And so, and I think that's my DNA. But we're most likely talking about rewriting that DNA. Is that what?
Okay, this is I don't know if this will work, but I think of the rewriting the DNA is like, replacing the hard drive, hard drive. But I think we're talking more about the program, like reprogramming. Does that work? Does that work? Like, I don't think we're changing our DNA,
But habit energy.
but our habit energy, the mentality, the software. Yeah. 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 Which, because of the epigenetics, because of the, that will affect the hard drive, but really it's the software. Right. And I'm sorry, did anyone online? We're actually at time. Okay. I don't think so.
Thank you. We're on the 5th.
I think it's the 5th. So yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't get it very often.
So we're on our special 5th week, so we get to do our special closing meditation, the guided meditation on letting go. So breathing in, I see the need I have to control my life. Breathing out, I let go of the need to control my life. Breathing in, I see that control is an illusion. Breathing out, I relax in my inability to control. Breathing in, I see how critical I am of myself. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be critical. Breathing in, I see all the goodness in me. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge of the goodness in me. Breathing in, I see the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing out, I let go of the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing in, I see that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing in, I see that I crave many things. Breathing out, I let go of the need to crave many things. Breathing in, I see that I have enough. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge that I have enough. Breathing in, I see that I am too busy. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be too busy. Breathing in, I want a less hectic life. Breathing out, I relax in the quiet of this moment. Breathing in, I see that letting go can make me free. Breathing out, I am free. Breathing in, I see that by being free, I can be happy. Breathing out, I am happy. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Blair, Lise, Tim, Carl, Agnes, Kelly. May all beings be well and happy. If everybody can, I'm just going to turn off the recording, but if everybody could stay, because I have an announcement to make.